Well, hello everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. I am joined here by Celine Gallas, a Rebel News reporter from Alberta. Celine, how are you doing?
I'm doing really fantastic. I left this morning in a blizzard and I came to Ottawa and it's like plus 15 degrees. So
That's
it's
great.
one good thing in Ottawa
The
right now.
great, corrupt, liberal city of Ottawa. The architecture is beautiful here, but the people not quite the same. If you want to let us know your thoughts throughout the live stream, you can always go on Rumble or Odyssey, send us paid chats, and we'll do our best to read it on air at the end of the live stream. Later on, we will have Freedom Convoy volunteer, not quite organizer, participant, public persona, Tom Razzo coming on. And we'll also have leader of the Ontario Party here in Ontario, Derek Sloan, come on as well to discuss the Emergencies Act inquiry and everything that has happened today. Also, just so that you guys know, on November 19th and November 25th, we will have Rebel News live events in both Toronto and Calgary. And in the Toronto event, I believe that we will have Tamara Leash participate as a speaker. So you will be able to hear from the great Tamara Leash, convoy organizer Tamara Leash as well. So Celine, this was your first day in Ottawa. What was your main takeaway from today?
Well, again, besides the weather, it's just really interesting to see. There's some protesters that have started to show up outside of where the emergency commission is being held here in Ottawa. I can only imagine that where there are one, there will be many more to follow. So that'll be interesting. I really thought that it was very interesting what Tom Razzo screamed for all the people in the back, what we're thinking for the last 3 years. But when he actually refused to talk to mainstream media, that was really interesting. I believe we have one of those clips as well. But again, that's something that a lot of people have been saying, and it's nice to have people publicly refuting or refusing to speak with mainstream media.
Yeah, I think we've heard both Chris Barber, one of the organizers of Freedom Convoy, and Tom Razzo as well, in both of their testimony, discuss the way that they see mainstream media has manipulated the narrative, has vilified the Freedom Convoy. I think that's the reason why people were so upset in mainstream media, because they weren't giving them a fair share.
They weren't portrayed correctly.
Well, exactly. They were vilifying the people participating in the Freedom Convoy. We can see on the screen right here, Tom Razzo refusing to take a question from one of the mainstream media reporters earlier today. So today, just a reminder, we had Freedom Convoy lawyer Keith Wilson testify in front of the commission. We also had Freedom Convoyer Tom Razzo testify as well. And we had Pat King, who ended the day. I think he might still be giving his testimony, King, at the moment. That is very possible. So Celine, you've been following also. I think that you've been following not the convoy, the Emergencies Act inquiry for the past weeks as well, for the past 3 weeks.
I'll agree, that's right.
It's been a long 3 weeks. We always talk about what we're seeing throughout the inquiry. We also talk about our takeaway from the inquiry. What was your takeaway from the past 3 weeks?
Well, as some of you might know, I was actually there when the convoy first arrived in Ottawa. I showed up the same night that the truck started to pile in around the Parliament building and down Wellington. And from that point onward until the police came and crashed it was peaceful. So my main takeaway from the Emergencies Act inquiry is that, again, there's a lot of discussion around even what they're calling the protesters. If they're protesters, if they're racist, if they're misogynists, if they're sexist, then the narratives just keeps on changing. And when you see so many inconsistencies with stuff like this, I think it's fairly obvious that it's a cover-up that's going on. That's my opinion, at least, that I believe that it's a cover-up. And there's no way that you can actually, with all of the proof, all the videos from the very beginning, since those trucks got there, to the very end, no one can tell me that they were anything except peaceful.
100%. You were also part of the Freedom Convoy, and we heard, as you just mentioned, Paul Champ, lawyer, that keeps arguing about how non-peaceful, about how threatening the Freedom Convoy people were. We heard Zexi Lee say that the people that were part of the Freedom Convoy were harassing citizens, even though we learned that the own citizens of Ottawa who were opposing the Freedom Convoy were throwing eggs.
They're egging them, exactly.
Yeah, we're egging the protesters. Is what you're hearing right now from the testimonies of these anti-convoy people the same thing as you've witnessed as a journalist in Ottawa?
No. Like, absolutely not. I left before before the police started to really pile in there and like crack down on the peaceful protesters. So I just saw the very beginning where everyone was still very much in a state of awe. And it was the first time that you saw so many people smiling together, laughing, being merry, cheering. That was the norm that people were looking for. So when you have people like Zexi Lee who are testifying and trying to validate throwing eggs at trucks and at protesters because there was honking or like microaggressions and people were being offended. It's very interesting. Like, how can you validate something like that? What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's so crazy, and we've seen there's a single counter protester, well, a protester actually that's been here for the past few days in front of the commission building, that's been calling the truckers, the Freedom Convoy people, terrorists, that's been calling them racist, that's been calling them far right lunatics. We see her right here,
literally...
and not a single supporter of the Freedom Convoy has laid a finger on her. I think they were terrorists. Something like that would have happened, and we have yet to see any violence that's been put on this woman for protesting Tamara Lich, protesting Tom Marazzo, protesting the Freedom Convoy people. Yeah.
Well, especially like think about how Antifa was brought into this as well, right? So you had aggressors in the crowd that were trying to pretend that they were part of the freedom movement as these peaceful protesters. And you could see, even I remember being there when so many people would take interviews from Mocha and myself or Alexa Lavoie or Lincoln J, anyone from Rebel or actual independent media. But you had people with huge cameras going and standing behind like police lines, casting this very ominous shadow over this crowd, making it look very dangerous. And that is not a part of the narrative that the people there like actually saw, listened to. That's not what they're portrayed as, because the mainstream media is very, very good at taking those angles and making sure that the truth is smeared.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Tom Marazzo refused to answer questions from the mainstream media. I think that's the reason why.
So. I would think so.
No, we've got some great guests that are about to come on in a few minutes. So just tell us a bit more. One last thing, tell us a bit more about what you're going to do here in Ottawa, what you plan on doing for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I'm going to be here to live tweet the court proceedings, just as you've seen many of the Rebel journalists have been doing. And beyond that, I'll be here to scrum some of the people that are testifying as well, alongside William here. I know he's really got a hold on that, but I definitely want a piece of the action, and also grant a little bit of a Western perspective, because someone obviously born and raised in the West, and from so many people of seeing so many members of the freedom movement, the convoy, come up from the West Coast all the way to the East to be a part of this. I think that's a really interesting perspective to hold those comparisons.
Yeah, it was definitely a big movement. Well, thanks for coming on, and I truly look forward to be working with you in the next few days, next few weeks.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a short break, and then when we come on, we will have Tom Marazzo join us to talk about his testimony.
Freedom in 2022 is not sitting idly by while health diktats with no skin in the game make up all the rules. If you're like me and want to play an active role in upholding civil liberties and freedoms for all Canadians, for our children, and eventually our grandchildren, then come out to our Rebel Live event and get to know us in person. We'll hearing from some of the most influential leaders in the freedom movement. We have events in Toronto on November the 19th and in Calgary on Saturday, November 26th. Tickets are on sale now at rebelnewslive.com. Come out, have lunch, get some Rebel swag, meet the Rebels, and more. You don't want to miss this event. Check it out, rebelnewslive.com.
Oh, Tom, we heard from a fringe number of witnesses from the past few weeks that they saw violence throughout the convoy. Did you see that yourself? Do you think that represents the essence of the movement?
I saw a lot of violence on the 18th and 19th of February, and it was all from the police. That's all.
What are your thoughts on Jeremy Mackenzie? You spoke about him a little bit earlier. Can you elaborate on what you think of his views?
Jeremy's got a lot of controversial things that he says. Some things are great, some things I disagree with fundamentally. but he's an entertainer. Like it or not, he says things that are controversial. And that's what entertainment is about. You can tune in or turn it off if you want to.
You also said the media wrongfully represented your position during the convoy, wrongfully represented Freedom Convoy. Can you elaborate on what exactly you meant? Well, it's great to have you on, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm good. I feel like I've just written my final exams for the school year.
So Tom Russell was one of the witnesses to testify earlier during the commission. And I think it's been probably 5 live streams since we didn't have you on. So can you explain can you explain who you are? Can you tell our viewers a little bit about your background, who you are, what you're doing here in Ottawa?
Well, I only have 40 minutes. So yeah, so I've been here. I did participate in the convoy in January and February. And I was summoned or subpoenaed to come here and testify at the Public Order Emergency Commission, which is where I've been for the last couple of weeks since it started. We're on, I think, day 15 of the all the testimony. Mm-hmm. And I'm just here with the lawyers and some of the other witnesses, Tamara Leach, and Chris Barber. And we're just assisting the legal team with a lot of the fine detail. For when other people testify, we can fill in a lot of the blanks that maybe our lawyers don't have. Mm-hmm. So, and then my part-time gig is I come on here most nights.
Yeah. And usually I'm the one that's better dressed between both of us, but say you're the one who's
I would have been upset if you didn't mention at least the tie with a proper shirt.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have the puppy though, but you have a tie, you have a suit. I've been telling you for a few weeks now, wear a tie, wear a tie.
I know.
First time you wear it, and I'm not even wearing it myself. I know. So, the clip that we saw earlier, the first clip that we looked at right before you came on, was a clip from the scrum that you did after the commission, right after the commission, after your testimony with the media there were not every media as we see. We're going to get to that a little bit later, but there's so much to unpack from both your testimony, Keith's testimony, what we saw today. Let's throw one of the clips from Tom's testimony from today. I guess I'll take just a second.
Sure.
We can take a look at the first one. Mm-hmm.
Noticed things that I never before believed that I would see in Canada related to the way the police and bylaw and the government were going after Canadians. And for the first time in my life, I was, actually afraid of police. And I have several friends that are police officers. And I had a phone call with Randy Hillier one day, and Randy didn't know who I was. This was, I sent an email to him and Roman Baber and other people, and months later, his office had returned the call. And Randy doesn't even recall the conversation. And they said, I spent 25 years of my life in the military, and for the first time, I'm actually afraid in my own country. And he said, never be afraid. Like, you can't be afraid of the police or the government. They're here to serve us. And I think for me, that kind of flipped a switch where I was like, I went from thinking I'm afraid to get arrested or beaten by the police or getting an $880 fine to, you know what, now I want the fine. I'm done. I'm not going to hide from these people anymore. And so that started to mentally transition the way I thought. And then we came to a point where I thought, well, at some point the lawyers are going to step in and intervene and start protecting the public. And they didn't, except for a few. Then when the vaccine came out, I thought, well, the medical community is going to stand up and put a stop to this because of informed consent. And they didn't, except for a few. And it was the truckers that gave me an opportunity to actually get into, fighting for my kids' rights.
Well, first of all, I think that you did extremely well during the testimony. It was really great to watch. Both you and Keith, I think both of you did a great job. I think the clip that we just saw right here, a lot of Canadians are feeling the same way. I believe at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of Canadians were willing to comply with the rules, were willing to go along with the authoritarian mandates that were placed to them. And I think through the pandemic, when they saw the government actually overreaching a lot, and we even saw Keith talk about it, that's the reason why he became involved with GCCF, became involved with the Freedom Convoy. I think that's how a lot of Canadians are feeling. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I learned a lot about how Canadians felt when I was campaigning with the Ontario Party. Every day we would go out to an event and we would talk to ordinary Canadians, and the level of fear and anxiety that people felt in this country, like you saw in the video, are things that I never ever thought that I would experience in Canada. And unfortunately, we did. And in the horror stories that I heard over and over and over while campaigning were very reflective of the things that I was seeing. In fact, I was watching Rebel Media long before I was involved in the Convoy. My actual source of good unedited information was coming from Rebel and a few other alternative media sources. I knew I couldn't trust the mainstream media, but what I was seeing was how I was feeling. And, it's really heartbreaking to acknowledge that is the reality in this country. And that is all thanks to both the legacy media and the government of Canada and every political party, every level of government in this country.
And as someone who served in the army, is that something that you were expecting to see from your government? I don't think.
No, absolutely not. If you actually, a lot of people bring up the oath all the time. You're forgetting your oath. If you actually look at the oath there are a couple of different ones that police give, but for the military, you don't swear an oath to the people of Canada or the Constitution. You actually swear an oath at the time to the Queen of England, her heirs and successors. Right. And so, you have to be clear on why you're joining the military, obviously. I know what was in my heart when I joined the military, and it had nothing to do with upholding a tyrannical regime. And as far as I was concerned, I still am concerned. That's what we have right now in this country.
Yeah, is that one of the reasons why you decided to join James Stop and the group Veterans for Freedom and work alongside all of these people?
Yeah, I think that when the veterans or the police take a stand of this magnitude or this importance, I think it is I think the public should take special notice of that. It is the role of a soldier to fight if called, and there's something called informed consent, where not informed consent, unlimited liability that is exclusive to being a military, a soldier. And when you live by unlimited liability, that means that you could be ordered to your certain death in combat. So when the people that are willing to lay down their lives, literally, are stepping out of the norms and speaking up, I think the public should take notice of that. But unfortunately, because of the mainstream media, what we often get called is traitors and insurrectionists. And I think it's unfair. I think it doesn't show a lot of evolved thinking on the part of the Canadian public overall. But when the police and the military both stand up and say, hey, there's a problem here, I think the public should take note of that and stop listening to the anchor man, Yeah,
you're 100% right. Yeah, we've heard a lot of people call James Stop a traitor, call yourself a traitor.
I got called a traitor on the way walking here.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Was it by the same lady who's
the same lady out front of the commission?
Traitor. I always find it so incomprehensible how someone who can stand up to the rights of Canadians, which is literally his job in a certain way, which is what he has to do as a true Canadian, as an army man.
Well, the irony is
be called a traitor.
Yeah, the irony is that every soldier knows that they could end up sacrificing their life on behalf of people that hate them.
Yeah.
I could have been killed in combat so that she had the right to go out there, that lady there with the
and call you a terrorist.
And call me a terrorist and scream vile things at me. And that's something that as a soldier, you accept the fact that people will have the right to say certain disgusting things right to your face, no matter what.
Well, that's freedom of speech. That's the foundation of Western civilization. Yeah. Another interesting thing that you also touched on during your testimony, and we can see this on the clip 10, was your personal experience in regards to government freezing bank accounts of Canadians. Can we show that clip? It's the 10th clip in the list.
And were you given any information, either from the bank or from the police, as to how your bank accounts could be reopened?
I was never notified that my bank accounts had been frozen, and I was never notified that they would be, and I was never notified that they were reinstated at no time.
So did you just find out that they were frozen because you could no longer use your cards?
Could no longer access any of our financial assets at all.
And I think in addition to this clip, there's also part of your testimony when you talk about your family having their bank account frozen in deeper length. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I think the lesson here for everybody is, what's the phrase? Cash is king.
Don't rely on credit cards.
Yeah, that we now live in a society where if you step out of line with what the federal government believes, they will just shut you off.
Yeah.
You know, and Derek Sloan and I, and you know, when we were campaigning, actually, and I'm bringing this up because I know Derek is on after and he can speak to this as well, but we were adamantly against
that's right,
the digital
society.
ID and a cashless society for exactly these reasons. Because when my bank accounts were frozen, my credit card that was on file with my son's drugstore, we could not get his heart medication. Right? What did my son do that now put his life in jeopardy? He didn't do anything, and the government of Canada, without any consideration to the second and third order effects of people's lives. You know, we heard other testimony, I think, from Bridget, that she struggled. She couldn't get her husband's diabetes medication, if I'm remembering that correctly. So, you know, they didn't give any consideration to the second, third order effects of what they were doing. They just did it because they could.
Yeah.
And then you see Chrystia Freeland just giggling away like Philip the goat from Diagolon. You know, when she's talking about how she's freezing financial assets. She thought it was funny.
Yeah, you know, Diagolon, that's another thing that I want to talk about. I don't think we have a clip ready for that, but can you talk to us a little bit more about Jeremy Mackenzie's fake country called the Diagolon?
Yeah, and I couldn't remember the vice president of Diagolon's name. It is in fact Philip.
Oh, right. Is it a goat as well?
Philip is the time traveling coke addicted goat who is the vice president of the fictitious country or state of Diagolon. Diagolon is if you draw a line from Alaska across Alberta down to Texas, creates a diagonal line. And that's the states and provinces that actually don't have mask mandates at the time when he created it. And their arch enemy are the states and provinces around that are, that's called Circle-on. That's their arch enemy, Diagonal and Circle. And this is
sounds super real.
Yeah, I mean, this is it got brought up in my testimony as well today, because it was brought up in the House of Commons during the invocation when they were debating. The Liberals were actually debating and saying that this was a terrorist organization and that it was correct to use the Emergency Act because of Diagolon, a meme, a social media meme, a joke. This is the world we live in under Justin Trudeau right now.
Oh, that's right. Well, let's go to a quick ad break, and then when we come back, we can talk about your views of mainstream media and what you said about mainstream media, both in the inquiry and then afterwards during the quick scrum that we're able to have with you.
Sure.
Freedom in 2022 is certainly about being able to make free choices for ourselves and for our family, who we believe are the best. We have seen so much suffering over the last 2 years. People who die alone in terrible conditions, people losing dream jobs, polarized families, and a society that insult and yell at each other for making a different medical choice. But people have risen, and it will be through them that the future will have an important meaning for all of you, but especially for the next generation. Rebel News has been present at every step of this great challenge, but so many other pioneers whom you could meet and hear at our great conference about freedom for our beautiful country, which is Canada. This conference, which will be held in Calgary and Toronto, will show you the faces of the influence of freedom that you have seen over the past 2 years. You don't want to miss this, so get your ticket now at rebelnewslive.com, and it will be a pleasure to see you there and meet you in large numbers. It's time to drop these masks and let the truth shine.
All right, mainstream media. That was one of the main parts of your testimony as well. We heard you talk a lot about them. Before we start, why don't we throw to one of your clips, clip number 8, where we can see you in the inquiry talk about your views in regards to mainstream media.
Sure.
Take a look.
Did you take any steps to clarify what you meant with the media outlets who were reporting that the protesters wanted to form a coalition government?
No, I was not in charge of direct contact. I had no direct contact with the media, and as far as I was concerned, my belief was if they actually started to do their job and report fairly, we would reward them with contact, or I would, or whatever. Not necessarily me, but if they continued down the path of constantly vilifying and lying about us, I didn't see the point really of talking to them at all. We were effective, highly effective at getting out everything we wanted to get out to the public through alternative and social media.
So you didn't make any efforts to go to the reporters who had reported a different interpretation and say, that's wrong, can you please fix it?
No.
And so you don't know whether or not they would have issued a correction or maybe not a correction, a follow-up story, you just don't know.
I don't know, and they never reached out to talk to me from my knowledge either.
I can assure you, from someone who was in the video room while you were saying it, the vibe wasn't the same as it was right before that. What's your issue with mainstream media?
They lie. And they have been doing nothing but lie since the pandemic began. And I think they probably were part of the lie before the first lockdowns started. And they just continue to perpetuate all of Justin Trudeau's lies. They do not report in a balanced, transparent manner. They don't go and get stories of even the doctors or even lawyers or nurses that had a counter opinion to the official government or Ministry of Truth's beliefs. And so I just, after all this time, I am not going to ever give them a soundbite. And I had an issue too when James Top, myself, and Paul Alexander, Dr. Alexander, met with. You were there. You covered it that day. In fact, I took the video that you posted up on YouTube, and I reposted that because you're the only one who actually didn't edit. You captured the truth of what the conversation was.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. And they chopped it up and created their own little narrative around sound bites. And so I just don't want to give them any sound bites whatsoever that they're going to chop up. And I have no doubt now that they'll take even my little passing comment when I walked by and said they're liars. They'll chop that up into something disgusting like they typically do. So as far as I'm concerned, they're just doing they're the biggest megaphone for Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh and all these people that are perpetuating lies. We all know they get paid. I mean, it's almost self-abusive because we as taxpayers fund.
Yeah, we're paying for that.
We're paying to be lied and victimized by the mainstream media. So I refuse to participate in any of their games. So I walked right by. I saw you, and I only I spoke to you and I spoke to Andrew Lawton.
Yeah.
Because I just refuse to reward them in any way possible, because even if they tell you that they're good, they're going to find a way to make you look bad.
Oh, for sure. And, it's funny that you mentioned megaphone, because that's what I was thinking of. There's a picture that I saw recently online. It's journalism in the 1970s, where you see the politician speaking, you see the people on one side, and you see the reporter with a megaphone shouting at the politician, being the voice of the people. Now, once 2022, you see the exact same thing, the politician there, the people here, but you see the journalists pointing the megaphone at the people, basically regurgitating everything the politician is saying. Is this what you see?
Well, that's exactly it. And I've told this story a few times in various events, that in 1933, when Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, first thing he did was actually issue free radios into the homes of every German family. And he was also in control of the content that those homes were receiving. This is how governments historically get their message out to the people that they want the people. And now look at us at Bill C-11. Last I was tracking it, it passed its second reading in the Senate.
That's right.
We're inches away. We're inches away from the government having full dominance of the internet. And that puts all of us at risk of being an informed society if the government is going to dictate what we can and cannot consume.
No, Bill C-11 is an absolutely terrible bill. It's an online censorship bill, Soviet Union style censorship bill. It's absolutely terrible. And if it passes third reading in the Senate,
and it will.
Yeah, I have some hopes that it won't pass, but I think there's a large chance. I think it will be terrible for the future of Canadian society. Listen, we have you on for only a few minutes.
Sure.
And I really want to get to one specific clip. As we mentioned earlier, after your testimony, you stepped out in the room and you did a 3-minute scrum with us. I think it will be worth it to show the full scrum that we did together. So let's take a look at that, and then we can talk a little bit, and then I'll let you go.
Sure.
Fully represented your position during the convoy, roughly represented Freedom Convoy. Can you elaborate on what exactly you meant by that?
Yeah, and I talked about it in the testimony today, where they vilified people, or vilified the comments that I made for basically saying that I wanted to form a government or be part of a government. That was not the intent of those comments. They never retracted it after we did the updated statement saying we wanted nothing to do with the internal workings of the government, but the media never corrected that. They just continued on the vicious attacks and the narrative that they wanted all along. That served their purpose.
Can you also explain? So you weren't an organizer at the beginning, but you were also only a spokesperson, as you said, for 2 days. So why were you testifying on the stand today in the inquiry?
I was summoned to be here, like all the other witnesses.
And last question from me, do you think there's ever a way that our country can recover from the damage that was done from the politicians and the police in the past 2 years?
The people of Canada have no voice, they have no power, because of the legacy media constantly lies and misrepresents everything that has been going on for 2 years. And I think the media is when the media decides to be on the side of the people, then I think you'll get some change. But right now they're on the side of the government, who constantly lies.
If Justin Trudeau or representatives of the federal government had met with you, what would your response have been, or those of your colleagues?
I would have clearly articulated why these mandates, we believed, were unjustified, immoral, illegal, and that Canadians had spoken and sent us to Ottawa to deliver that message and come up with a way to remove the mandates and then plot a way forward.
If they heard that message but didn't change policy, would that be enough for the protest to have said mission accomplished and go home, in your view?
No, the objective was to get rid of all federal mandates. And leadership starts at the top. So if Justin Trudeau had decided to do the right thing, the right moral thing, and to listen to the wishes of Canadians, then maybe the premiers would have found their moral courage as well and started listening to people in this country. Because 2 years prior to the convoy, Canadians were protesting all over this country, and not one single politician heard those concerns.
Can you talk about the relationship with the police services on the ground?
Who are you with?
I'm a reporter, a local reporter for Le Droit. Can you talk about the relationship with the police?
Did you get everything? You know, in a certain way, I feel like that was a liberal politician moment. That's what we're being told all the time. We're Doug Ford. Who are you with? Rebel News? That's not enough. Those people aren't used to being told no.
Yeah, and there's a big part of me that felt a little, a moment of satisfaction walking away, because they want to take the soundbite, chop it up, and make it into something ugly. Mm-hmm. And I just don't want to play that game with them. For as long as alternative media is allowed to continue and allowed to keep telling the truth, that is, that's going to be a direct threat to the government in the competition. I think that's the genesis of Bill C-11. It's not about keeping the internet safe from hate. It's about keeping absolute dominant control over what Canadian citizens get to digest and consume really from the media. The message is going to be controlled directly from the government of Canada, the Ministry of Truth. It is not going to be, you're not going to have the ability to do research. I mean, I would, if I was people, I'd be out there getting stocks in VPN companies right now. That's what I'd be doing.
For sure, I'm sure you're going to do a lot of profits in the next few months if Bill C-11 is actually enacted into law. And just one last thing, you seem to have this little competition, this little clash, a little hatred towards mainstream media right now. Do you think it's ever going to be resolved?
No, I think we need to defund the CBC and every media outlet that gets money from the government. And, the CRTC has a lot of explaining to do to the public, because really the CRTC was put into place because there was limited airwaves for the legacy media to get different portions of it. That's not the case with the internet anymore. And so CRTC has become irrelevant, but they've had to reinvent themselves as, the gatekeepers of the internet now. And it's completely unnecessary. It's unnatural. And I just don't think that we need it. And I think the market is going to punish legacy media with their behavior anyway. So that's a bit of a risk to us, because as they get less viewership, the government's going to get more creative in making sure that we find a way to consume their garbage.
That's right. Well, that's what we're seeing with Bill C-11.
C-11,
yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Sam, today. I'll see you very soon in the next few days.
Next time, wear a tie.
I've been the one who's been telling you that for the past few weeks, and you're finally wearing. I'm glad to see you wear one.
Yeah.
I can promise I will wear one next time that you come on the show. You'll be less well dressed than me next time. All right, guys, stay on with us. We'll be able to have Derek Sloan come on right after this short break.
All right.
Freedom in 2022 is not sitting idly by while health diktats with no skin in the game make up all the rules. If you're like me and want to play an active role in upholding civil liberties and freedoms for all Canadians, for our children, and eventually our grandchildren, then come out to our Rebel Live event and get to know us in person. We'll hearing from some of the most influential leaders in the freedom movement. We have events in Toronto on November the 19th and in Calgary on Saturday, November 26th. Tickets are on sale now at rebelnewslive.com. Come out, have lunch, get some Rebel swag, meet the Rebels, and more. You don't want to miss this event. Check it out, rebelnewslive.com.
Just leader, not founder.
Leader, yeah. Sorry, guys, for the technical difficulty. I have currently with me Derek Sloan, leader of the Ontario Party of in Ontario. It says in the name. How are you doing, Derek?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me here.
Great. So, Derek, you were at the inquiry today for the first time since the past 3 weeks. What motivated you to come to Ottawa?
Well, obviously, I've been watching it through the news and in other ways. But today, a very good friend of mine, Tom Marazzo, was testifying. I wanted to be here to support Tom in person, and obviously, say hi to the other people who were there, along with Tamara Lich and Chris Barber and people like that. So it was a good day and some interesting testimony.
That's right. I think Tom's testimony really spoke to the people of Ontario, to the people of Canada. I think, as I mentioned with Tom earlier, that's how a lot of Canadians are feeling. They're feeling let down by the police. They're feeling let down by the government, by mainstream media. Is that one of the reasons why you're motivated to run for the Ontario Party in the last elections?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe my goal is to rejuvenate politics in Canada at every level. And I may not be able to, be a participant in every way in Canada in that, but I like to support people who are trying to make a change.
I see.
And so that's why I ran against Doug Ford in Ontario. And again, I believe that he's an example of the kind of leader that we need to see less of here in Canada. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, that's why I was involved. I know why Tom was involved as well. And it's great to be surrounded by so many great people.
Mm-hmm. And what were your thoughts from the inquiry today? That was the first time that you actually went in person. How are you feeling being in the room in person?
Well, it's very interesting. In some senses, it's surprising sort of that the room is not packed. I know there's a lot of people watching online and so forth and reading about it in the news, but it's not a packed room. There's not really that many people there outside of the people who are set to testify and the various lawyers that are there. So there's lots of room. Very interesting. I would say from my impression that the inquiry is being run in a fairly fair manner, in the sense that it feels like they're letting everybody say their piece, and a lot of very really bombshell information is coming out, and it's really painting the Liberals in a bad light. It's painting the whole invocation of the Emergencies Act again as unnecessary, and it's exciting to see, frankly.
And how closely have you been following the inquiry for the past since the beginning?
Yeah, fairly closely. I mean, I haven't been watching every minute, of course, on TV, but anything that's spoken about in the news and so on, I've seen that.
And which testimony surprised you the most, or really caught your attention the most out of everyone that's passed? We had Jim Watson.
Yes.
We had failed Ottawa mayoral candidate Catherine McKenney.
Yes.
We had Zeg Zili. Now your good friend Tom Marazzo.
Yes. Yeah, so for me, I think some of the most important information, really the OPP intelligence chief, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
That individual, some great stuff came out of that testimony. So basically, again, I didn't. So I read a news summary about what he said, but what I understand he did in part was to basically blame the media for sensationalizing the news that was coming out about the truckers' convoy, and he basically said, "Listen, there wasn't any real evidence of any, extremism or violence, and the media had a part to play in, blowing this way out of proportion." Mm-hmm. And I think that's, something that we all would have known that before, but it's great to have somebody on the record testifying to that.
Yeah. And were you in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So for our viewers at home that haven't really been following the commission, I think it would be great to show one of the clips from Keith Wilson, clip number 2, talk about the truckers that arrived in Ottawa and their intent when arriving in the capital of the country. Let's take a look at that clip.
Was never just to move up to Wellington. It was always recognized that probably only 25% of the vehicles could go to Wellington. The more dominant theme of the plan was for the vehicles to move to the remote locations at Embrun, Exit 88, and Arnprior, and to have expand the shuttle buses that were already running. And there was also, this is a very important point, and I don't know that it's come out yet, is a lot of people who were there, the truckers, never planned to stay that long. But the Canadians they met along the way, and the stories and the heartache that they heard, and the trust and plea that they heard from those people, many of the truckers I talked to felt this obligation to stay as long as they could, but they also needed a way to leave gracefully and respectfully. And one of the things we recognized was that if 75% of the vehicles were going to be given an opportunity to leave and go either to Embrum or Arnprior, that some would actually use it as an opportunity to go home and do so respectfully. So that was an important part of the plan.
Is that what you've been able to notice during your time here in Ottawa, during the Freedom Convoy?
Oh, just that it was a respectful protest and things
Well, that
like
was
this.
respectful.
Yeah.
People weren't planning on staying for a long run. However, they did decide to stay for a long run after seeing the issues that were at stake and the civil liberties that were basically fighting for.
Yeah. So my impression of the trucker convoy is that it was, again, a very organic movement that really materialized not because of the leadership of any one person or group of people, but just because of Canadians sort of having enough and being fed up with what was going on in the government. I think that when the convoy started taking on a life of its own from the beginning, in terms of, you know, adding more and more trucks to the convoy as it was coming from different areas of the country. And I think when people got here, one thing I noted when I was here is that, you know, the atmosphere was just so peaceful, even though it was, you know, almost 30 degrees below zero. It was almost like it was a mixture between like a family reunion and like a festival. And I think people just really were so proud to see so many people like them across the country. They were so glad to see, you know, Canadians rallying together, that it continued to evolve into what it became.
Yeah, and you know, while we're seeing it on the screen, I want to give you some time to address it in your view. We saw a few pictures only of a swastika flag being flown the whole time. We saw a Nazi flag being flown, and I feel the mainstream media blew all of this out of proportion.
Yes,
is that the general sense that you had? You talked about how peaceful it was. That did you feel it was a Nazi protest or a large neo-Nazi swastika racist presence in Ottawa?
So I believe the media deliberately tried to portray the trucker rally as something that it wasn't from the beginning. I think that's very clear. I mean, I remember one headline in the Toronto Star saying something along the lines of, you know, the trucker rally is white supremacism in all its glory. No, absolutely not. When I was there, I saw all different kinds of people, all different kinds of skin colors. There was a significant contingent of, you know, natives there. There's a lot of French people. There was a lot of people of all different backgrounds. There was none of that there. You know, this particular flag that was shown in the media, which I believe was taken in some corridor beside the Hotel the Chateau Laurier. I believe that again, I mean, that's not where that's not where you know the majority of people were. But again, who's to say who that was? Yeah. Maybe somebody was there just to discredit the movement, right? I mean, you know, nothing's to stop anyone who's opposed to the truckers movement from coming and doing things that are discreditable. And we've seen that in other situations where you have, you know, left-wing groups or other kind of groups that come in and try to discredit legitimate protests. So it could very well have been that, and it probably was.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, because one of the things that Andrew Lawson touched on when he came on the live stream a few days ago, he touched on the fact that he learned that the cameraman who was following those two guys holding swastika and Nazi flag was Justin Trudeau's cameraman. He was Justin Trudeau's photographer.
Sure.
I think it might have been staged. It's possible. I think there's a possibility that was the case. There's another interesting point that you touched on. I believe it was either Keith Wilson or Tom Morazzo that spoke about this during their testimony. There were a lot of Eastern European protesters at the Freedom Convoy. Yeah. And there's a clear reason for that. You know, in Eastern Europe, that's Soviet Union, that's Russia. And these people, these older gentlemen that are living in Eastern Europe, remember how it was like during the Soviet Union. Correct. Or they have parents or grandparents that were living through a Soviet Union regime. And I think if those people are so attracted to the convoy because they see there's an important message there, I think Canadians should take a listen to that, because it means that those people who know what an actual authoritarian, communist regime, dictatorship, basically a dictatorship, that type of regime, they know how it is. And I think the reason why they were so attracted to the convoy is because they saw Canada slowly moving towards that direction.
I think you're right. I think in my experience, almost anybody who has an Eastern European background or any experience with living in the Eastern Bloc has really, the light bulb has sort of come on during COVID. And a lot of these people see similarities with sort of what the government has done during COVID-19, especially, how they responded to the Freedom Convoy and other things as being exactly the types of things that they saw and experienced under communism. So I think these are lessons that we all need to consider. And it's good to see that so many people are waking up.
No, it's definitely great to see. Another thing that I also want to touch on is Doug Ford. You ran against Doug Ford, and we know that Doug Ford was summoned to testify during the inquiry. However, he's trying to fight it in court right now.
Correct.
What'd you make of that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting legal argument they're using. I mean, the political reason why is they don't want to lose face for what happened behind the scenes. I mean, it's very clear that Doug Ford and his brother Rob Ford, when he was alive, they were, behind the blue collar guy. They were into, truckers and that kind of thing. And Doug Ford threw them under the bus. And I don't think he is proud of that moment in his life. And I don't think he wants whatever deliberations went back and forth between himself and Justin Trudeau and others to be brought out into the light of day. And so regardless of the legal arguments that they're making, I hope that he is compelled to testify. And I hope that the truth of this comes out.
Do you think he's running under the name of his brother? He uses Ford Nation a lot, which is a term that his brother used. Do you think that's a strategy?
I mean, of course, right? I mean, the Ford brand for politically in this day and age is largely through his brother. And I mean, Ford Nation kind of, it refers to sort of, like the work hard, get it done, blue collar types. That's an association that, they've always reached out to. And frankly, he threw those types under the bus when he was in favor of this Emergency Act. So he should testify. And I hope he has to.
And while we have you on here, moving away a little bit from the trucker inquiry, because I'm curious to see your thoughts on that. Recently, Doug Ford decided to invoke the notwithstanding clause against the union of professor. Do you agree with Ford's decision to do that?
I believe that we need to take strong action to keep the schools open. As to the specifics of this negotiation, frankly, I mean, could it have been accomplished without? I don't know. I do know that what the union is asking for is a pretty significant increase. And frankly, my opinion over the years is that this particular union and the teachers union can be hard to deal with. I mean, that's clear. They're certainly paid better than many other places around the world, and they always want more. So whether they should have gone this route or whether it could have been dealt with in another way, I don't know. But listen, kids need to go to school. The fact that they're trying to walk out right now, they're asking for, I forget, it was an 11% pay increase or something like that.
High, yeah.
It's very high.
It's very high.
The exact percentage. That's a lot. And frankly, we live in an environment right now where everybody is needing, the cost of living is going up for everybody. Not many people are getting massive raises right now. And I think the public service needs to remember that. I mean, they're free to, start their own business or take another career if it pays more. But we can't be expecting the government to up the ante all the time when it comes to things like this.
Yeah, one of the things that I find pretty funny is to hear Stephen Lecce, the Interior Minister for Education, talk about the need for children to go back to school. We need to send our children back to school. When you're the exact government that locks them up for 2 years in Ontario. And then don't you find it a little bit hypocritical?
Yeah, it is bizarre. I mean, it appears to one degree or another, the PCs have grown a pair, or at least are doing some things that are a little bit,
to a certain extent,
a little bit braver. Right. But, we have to remember, the government that we're talking about here, legislate, making sure that the schools stay open. That's the right thing to do. Not giving in to, unfair union demands. That's the right thing to do as well. So we'll see what happens.
Are you going to be staying here in Ottawa for the next few days during the commission?
It's going to be an exciting week, and we're going to be here for the next couple of days.
Well, that's very exciting. I look forward to seeing you at the commission.
Yeah.
Do we have any chats? Olivia or Efron for today? Sure. Well, we'll take a look. So you're going to be staying here in Ottawa for next 3 days?
The next for sure tomorrow, possibly Friday, but there's definitely some exciting testimony. We have Tamara Ledge coming up. We have one of the infamous founders of the group that shall not be named is coming on Friday. And then there's also there's others as there's Danny Bulford. Danny Bulford testifying on Friday. So it's a packed week, and in some sense, I mean, obviously there's so many witnesses that are key witnesses, but I think Tamara's testimony is going to be one of the highlights of this whole affair. So that will be interesting to see, and we'll see what they can draw up. I mean, it's clear the government's approach is to try and tie this memorandum of understanding to an actual attempt to overthrow the government. Yeah, and they're also trying to connect this particular group to racism. And they're doing a pretty poor job of that. I mean, the memorandum of understanding is very clearly, a whimsical document drawn up by people who, don't really maybe understand exactly how things work here, but it was not in any way a legitimate attempt to have, some kind of a violent overthrow of the Canadian government.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think that's what the inquiry is revealing. Even the people that were against the convoy, I have a couple of friends that were opposed to the convoy while they worked here in Ottawa, that were in favor of the Emergencies Act when it was first invoked. And then after listening to the inquiry, they're starting to switch their position because they're seeing that there was no such thing as an emergency during the convoy. Yes. There was no need to trample the civil liberties of protesters. Yes. There was no need to have an authoritarian, never seen before act and vote on peaceful protesters. I think people are actually seeing it.
Yes, I think you're right. I think the public impression of the inquiry is that really the Emergency Act shouldn't have been invoked. I think that's the takeaway for sure.
100%. All right, let's look at some of the chats that we have. So the first one from Judah Bursey, and those names, I'm so terrible at reading them. Great job, Tom and Rebel Journalist. Well, thank you so much. Tom isn't the one sitting next to me, but I'm sure you can hear it in the background from our RBNP. Thank you, Tom, for coming on today. Is that the only one that we have? Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Derek's own leader of the Ontario Party here in Ontario. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone at home today. Stay tuned for the rest of the week and for the next few weeks as well. We will have Tamara Ledge testify at the commission in the next few days. We will also have a couple of other Freedom Convoy organizers that will be testifying, so it'll definitely be interesting to watch. Thank you for watching tonight, and I hope that you have a great night.
Freedom in 2022 is certainly about being able to make free choices for ourselves and for our family, who we believe are the best. We have seen so much suffering over the last 2 years. People who die alone in terrible conditions, people losing dream jobs, polarized families, and a society that insult and yell at each other for making a different medical choice. But people have risen, and it will be through them that the future will have an important meaning for all of you, but especially for the next generation. Rebel News has been present at every step of this great challenge, but so many other pioneers whom you could meet and hear at our great conference about freedom for our beautiful country, which is Canada. This conference, which will be held in Calgary and Toronto, will show you the faces of the influence of freedom that you have seen over the past 2 years. You don't want to miss this, so get your ticket now at rebelnewslive.com, and it will be a pleasure to see you there and meet you in large numbers. It's time to drop these masks and let the truth shine.